National Comics Eternity #1, written by Jeff Lemire, art by Cully Hammer. This is okay. So I did a little bit of research into this, and without getting too into the depths of it, there was a Golden Age character named Kid Eternity who was interlaced with the Shazam mythology. And as far as I can tell, it has pretty much nothing to do with this book at all. Just a same name of Eternity and the guy's human name, which is Christopher Freeman. But Jeff Lemire has taken a totally different take on this. So jumping into it, we have Christopher Freeman. He every night he has trouble sleeping because he has the same nightmare of him arguing with his dad and trying to say something, and then all of a sudden they were hit in a drive-by shooting. Both of them heavily bleeding out on the streets, and then he feels this pulling into the place between places where he sees a whole bunch of dead people, but specifically his father, and he's like, son, come with me, come, I'm scared, I don't know any of these people. And he's like, no, Dad, let's not stay here, let's go. And he's like, no, we have to stay. And in the end, Christopher manages to cling to life and live long enough. He's okay, whereas his dad bleeds out on the street saying, you shouldn't have left me, you should have come with, which obviously is a lot to put on the son. But anyway, Christopher wakes up and he is late for work, and he works as a coroner. He works as a coroner for the police, and he's just there to determine cause of death and whatnot. So he makes his way into work, and he's on the subway, and as he looks in the subway, he sees this man dressed in a suit staring at him. And the man gets off the train, and Christopher goes to look to see, like, who was that guy? Why was he looking at me? But as soon as he tries to find him, he's completely gone without a trace. And he's like, all right, anyway, that's weird. Also, there's a girl at work I like, and we see her working at the front desk on the phone. And he's like, she doesn't even know I'm here. I can't build up the nerve to talk to her. Gosh, I wish I could. But anyway, his boss kind of says, hey, you're late. Get down. We got a fresh one down on your table. Time to get to work. So he makes his way down, and there's a man down there died. He has some scratches on his neck, some bruising on his knuckles, but the cause of death was a gunshot wound to the heart. And so he sees this man dead there, and they don't really have any ideas to, like, who killed him or anything like that. But turns out that Christopher, he has a power set of he can touch anybody. He can then make contact with them and go into that place between places, the place he saw before, and find their soul. As long as they died pretty much within 24 hours, he can go in there, find their soul, and bring it back up to the land of the living, and basically just ask them questions and try to get to the root of their thing. So he goes down. The guy's name is Darby Quinn. And he goes down there, he gets the soul. But as he tries to pull Darby up, the guy on the subway is there holding Darby down. He's like, not so fast. This guy is mine. But Christopher barely even notices. He manages to get Darby out of there because Darby kicks the guy off. And they make their way back to the land of the living. And Darby is, of course, slow to accept that he's dead. Christopher walks him through it. He's like, yeah, look, here's the thing. We have a limited amount of time. If we're to solve how you died, I need you to work through it. And the way that it works is he doesn't remember the 24 hours leading up to his death. He can, lead Christopher to what he remembers there, but everything else is very hazy. And as they get closer to his time being up where he has to go, he will remember more and more of it. So eventually they realize, like, okay, so the plan is I'm just going to take you back to the place where we found your body, and then maybe you'll remember something when we're there. But he sees his boss is, like, watching him talk to air at this point, and he's like, have you even started this body yet? And he's like, well, I was. And he's like, dude, your dad, he worked for us. He was the best. And that is the only reason I am giving you this job here, because frankly, you have done nothing to show that you deserve it. So go home. Rest of the day is unpaid, but you need to figure out whether or not you can actually do your job here. So at that point, Christopher's like, all right, I need to prove your case today in order to prove to my boss that I am worth keeping on. So they go back to the place where he died, which ended up being his home/shop. He lived above his shop where he sold a bunch of antique stuff. And we see that down underneath the counter is a collection of antique weaponry, including a World War II pistol that is no longer there, but the slot for it was. So it's like, okay, well, that's probably what you were shot by. I'm sure that we could find the bullet or trace the shot inside of you and see if that matches up with that sort of bullet. But anyway, let's see what more we got. Upstairs is where you actually died. So they go up to his bedroom and they see a pile of blood and they're like, okay, well, do you keep the pistol loaded? And it's like, no, and only I knew where I kept the rounds. So that's a bit weird. But then they notice that the door leading to the upstairs is unlocked. And the upstairs is a separate tenant that he rents out. And he can't remember her name, but he knows that she dresses. By the way, this guy is like stereotypical, like super macho Italian New Yorker kind of guy. Like he's like, I'm walking here sort of thing. And he's like, her and her freaky friends, she dresses all skanky. She probably killed me and robbed me. And it's just like, well, nah, you weren't robbed, so I don't know. But she is our best lead, so maybe we should try to find her. Do you remember her name? He's like, no, I don't know her name. All I know, she was in some crazy weirdo band, and she was putting up flyers, and I was tearing them down outside the shop. So Christopher goes down to the trash, finds one of the flyers, and sees that it's for the Emoticons, which the lead singer is the girl that he remembers. So they have a gig that night, and Christopher and the ghost make their way into the place, and they're basically just looking for the backstage. And at this point, Darby is starting to bleed more. He's more visibly starting to die, I guess you would say. And he's also like showing how much of a dick he really is. So Christopher, he heads backstage, and they see that the girl is there. She's sobbing uncontrollably, and Darby's just like, oh, look at her, that little slut. He's probably crying over having killed me. And it's just like, Darby, what in the hell is wrong with you? But Christopher introduces and just like, hey, look, I work with the police. You're not in trouble. I just have a few questions. But Sally immediately freaks out and pulls out the World War II gun from her purse because she thinks, that she is like about to go to prison or something like that. And it's just seeing the gun flashes back Christopher to the day his father died. He freaks out a little bit, long enough to let Sally get away. But then Christopher starts piecing it together. He's like, well, also Darby straight up says, like, I told you she did it. That little slut walked in and out of my apartment all hours of the night, bringing guys home. She was too good for me. Well, I showed her. And that's where Christopher starts putting it together of like, wait a minute, hold on. You're the only one who knew where your ammo was. You have scratches on your neck and bruises on your finger. You tried to force yourself on this girl, and then she shot you. And you brought the gun in order to force her into it, and she turned it on you. That's the whole reason this happened. So then at that point, Darby's like, yeah, whatever, she killed me. You're going to get justice for me? And he's like, no, she killed you in self-defense. You go to hell. Like, I'm done with you. And at that point, he's dragged back into the underworld, and Christopher then goes out to find Sally, who's made her way up to the roof of the nightclub, and she's about ready to jump. And Christopher talks her down and says, like, hey, look, I believe you. I can find the evidence to prove it. Just come on down. And at that point, the cops show up. His boss shows up saying, like, I have no idea how in the world you figured this out, especially on your day off. But, okay, maybe you got something. Maybe you're either incredibly lucky or you're a mad genius. But either way, you might just have more of your dad than I realized. See you at work tomorrow. So Christopher's just looking over the edge of the building, and that guy from the subway shows up again. And he's like, Christopher, you're not playing by the rules of the game here. And Christopher's like, I seen you. How do you know my name? And he's like, I know everything about you. I used to be a lot like you, but here's the deal. You can call me Mr. Keeper. You're not playing by the rules. And Christopher's like, what rules? And he's like, well, I can't tell you the rules. That's one of the rules. And he's like, okay, so what's going on? And he's like, well, you're going to need to figure him out soon, because otherwise things are going to start getting very dangerous. And Christopher's like, are you threatening me? He's like, nope, not quite, but you'll see me again soon. And he just jumps off the building, to which Christopher looks over, and again, he's not there. So next morning, Christopher finally has a good night's sleep, no nightmares. He finally feels like he has some sort of purpose. He makes his way into work, and he's like, maybe I will finally talk to that girl. But he doesn't see her there at the time, because he actually gets to work on time this time. So he makes his way downstairs, and there's a fresh body on his table, and when he pulls off the sheet, it's the girl. She died. And that's where we leave off, on a cliffhanger of interesting proportions. I gotta say, from what I read of Kid Eternity, completely different, like 200% different. But I really do enjoy the show. I believe there was a show called Pushing Up Daisies or something like that had a similar sort of premise to this. I could be wrong in that regard. But no, it's just a solid read. Cully Hamner does a great job on art. And it really just gets me into the character just within this short period. It is a bigger than normal issue. It does have extra page count, but it's just a good book. It's a solid read. I definitely would have read a whole miniseries just based off this character, but just keeping it to the one shot here, it was good. It was very good. I'm going to go give it an 8.5. I really do enjoy it. I will say there is no good way to collect this book, so if you do want to read it, I would suggest just finding it online, buying it digitally. Otherwise, you're going to have to track down the actual paper issue like I did, which, gotta say, not the easiest, but 8.5 is definitely worth a read.